Emily Harrow's body was found curled inside a plastic tote, 8 months pregnant and buried beneath leaves, but the trail to her killer began years earlier with another missing woman, Jenna Caldwell, and a man they both knew too well. The morning air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Sunlight broke through the dense canopy of Pine Hollow, scattering golden beams across the narrow dirt trail. The hikers, 2 friends who had planned the trip weeks in advance, moved at a steady pace, enjoying the stillness that came with early hours. The forest was unusually quiet, no distant bird calls, no rustle of squirrels. Just the sound of their boots pressing into the soft ground and the occasional crunch of brittle twigs underfoot. A mile into their hike, the path curved sharply around a thicket of thorn bushes. One of the hikers slowed, their eyes catching on something out of place near the base of the brush. It wasn't the color of bark or fallen foliage, it was brighter, more artificial. They stepped closer, pushing back some low-hanging branches to get a better look. What emerged from beneath a layer of damp leaves was a large plastic tote, the kind used for storing clothes or holiday decorations. It was a dull blue, but years of wear had faded it unevenly, and streaks of dried mud clung to its sides. The object didn't seem abandoned in the casual way that hikers sometimes dumped trash. It was partially buried, as if someone had gone to the trouble of concealing it. The lid was fastened shut with several layers of heavy-duty duct tape, silver strips pressed so tightly that the edges curled from tension. Even without touching it, a faint, unpleasant odor reached the hikers, sharp, metallic, and sour, something their instincts told them wasn't right. They exchanged a glance that carried the weight of shared unease. They considered leaving it alone, but curiosity and a growing sense of dread pushed them to act. One took a cautious step forward, tapping the tote with the toe of their boot. The hollow thud that followed sounded wrong, not like clothing or discarded junk. Something heavier, the smell intensified, curling through the cool air. Without speaking, they backed away. It took them nearly half an hour to make it back to the trailhead, their pace quick but not frantic. When they reached the ranger station, they reported what they had found. The ranger on duty listened carefully, jotting notes before calling in the county sheriff's office. Within an hour, a pair of deputies followed the hikers back to the site. The forest seemed even quieter now, as if holding its breath. The deputies inspected the tote, noting the tape, the weight, and the partially buried position. A crime scene technician arrived, snapping photos from every angle before carefully cutting away the tape. The lid gave a reluctant creak as it was pried open. Inside, beneath a folded tarp, lay the body of a young woman. Her skin was pale and lifeless, her limbs curled inward as though trying to shield herself. Her swollen abdomen made it instantly clear she had been heavily pregnant. The deputies stepped back in silence. In that moment, the stillness of Pine Hollow became something else entirely, not peace, but the kind of quiet that settles over a place touched by something terrible. Emily Harrow's name was released to the public 2 days after the discovery. The announcement came with a grainy photograph, her dark hair pulled back in a loose braid, eyes warm but distant, a slight smile as if she'd been caught off guard by the camera. In life, she was known to most as a waitress at a family diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where regulars came for coffee and conversation as much as for the food. She worked long shifts, often staying late to clean, her quiet nature making her easy to overlook. But to those close to her, she was dependable, kind, and fiercely protective of the life she was about to bring into the world. Emily had been 8 months pregnant when she vanished. She'd already chosen a name for her unborn son, Oliver, and kept a small collection of baby clothes neatly folded in her apartment. Friends remembered how she would touch her stomach while she spoke, an unconscious habit that made it clear she was already thinking like a mother. Her pregnancy hadn't been without complications, but she had attended every checkup, never missing an appointment. That made her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. Her last confirmed sighting was at the diner where she worked, leaving after her evening shift. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed her walking alone toward her apartment complex, a grocery bag in one hand. After that, the trail went cold. She was reported missing for days later by a co-worker, though at the time there was no immediate indication that she had been harmed. The autopsy told a different story. There were no bruises or broken bones, no signs of a struggle. The medical examiner determined she had died from asphyxiation, a slow, deliberate act that left no chance for escape. The absence of defensive wounds suggested she might have been attacked suddenly, or perhaps she knew her killer well enough not to resist until it was too late. The unborn child had died along with her. The examiner's report was blunt in its conclusion: both deaths were intentional. The plastic tote that held her body was a common storage container sold in dozens of stores. This one had been purchased at a hardware shop 3 miles from her apartment. Investigators pulled the store's security footage, but the night in question was missing from the digital archive. The store's manager swore it had been recording, yet a gap of several hours had been erased, leaving nothing but static. Detectives began piecing together Emily's final days, interviewing friends, co-workers, and neighbors. Some recalled that she had been more withdrawn lately, taking calls in private and avoiding certain questions. Others mentioned that she had been saving money, keeping cash hidden rather than depositing it in the bank. No one could explain why. In the growing shadow of the investigation, one detail stood out. Emily had seemed nervous in the weeks before her death. She locked her apartment door even when she was inside and kept the curtains drawn, as though she feared someone was watching. Investigators didn't yet know who that someone was, but they were certain of one thing: Emily's death had not been the work of a stranger passing through. It was personal. The investigation quickly turned toward the one person most closely tied to Emily's life: her boyfriend, Ryan Coster. He was 31, tall and broad-shouldered, with a reputation for being both charming and volatile. He worked irregular construction jobs, taking whatever contracts came his way, and was often seen at local bars late into the night. Ryan had moved in with Emily about 6 months into their relationship, but neighbors reported hearing frequent shouting matches in the weeks before her disappearance. No police reports had been filed, yet several residents of the apartment complex remembered seeing Emily in tears more than once. When questioned by detectives, Ryan claimed he had last seen Emily 2 days before she vanished. According to him, they had argued over finances and she had asked for space. He said he assumed she had gone to stay with a friend. His account seemed casual, almost indifferent, but it unraveled quickly when investigators obtained footage from a neighbor's security camera. The grainy video showed Ryan's pickup truck leaving the apartment complex late at night, the same night Emily was believed to have gone missing. In the bed of the truck was a large, tarp-wrapped object, the shape bulky and uneven. Detectives secured a search warrant for Ryan's residence, a small rental house on the outskirts of town. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach. Several sections of carpet in the living room and bedroom had been cut away, the bare floor beneath still damp from cleaning. A mattress was missing from the bed frame. In the garage, police found heavy-duty duct tape identical to the kind used on the plastic tote containing Emily's body. Despite the mounting evidence, Ryan was nowhere to be found. His phone was switched off, and there were no withdrawals from his bank account. His employer hadn't seen him in over a week, and his family claimed they had no idea where he was. A bolo be on the lookout was issued across the state, and roadblocks were set up along highways leading out of the county. Friends of Emily revealed more troubling information. She had told one of them that Ryan had grown controlling during her pregnancy. He disliked her working long hours and became angry when she made plans without him. She had hinted that she was considering leaving him, but worried about how he would react. This painted a darker picture of their relationship, one where resentment might have been building towards something irreversible. Still, there were unanswered questions. If Ryan had killed Emily, why take the risk of moving her body at night instead of disposing of it sooner? Why had he left behind such obvious traces of cleanup? Detectives began to suspect that he might not have acted alone. The possibility of another person being involved, someone who could have helped conceal the body or cover his escape, became a central part of the case. As the search for Ryan intensified, investigators couldn't shake the feeling that they were chasing someone who was already one step ahead. Every lead seemed to point toward him, yet each new discovery only deepened the mystery of what had really happened in the final hours of Emily Harrow's life. The search for Ryan stretched into its third week when a grim call came from a rural county 50 miles away. Two fishermen had been working the shallow edge of a winding river, their lines tangling on something lodged between jagged rocks. At first they thought it was a piece of discarded luggage, but when they pulled it free, the suitcase was heavier than it should have been. The zipper had been crudely stitched shut with fishing line, as though someone wanted to make sure it stayed closed. Authorities arrived and cut the stitches, revealing a body inside. The woman's face was swollen and battered beyond recognition, her hair matted with river silt. Fingerprints confirmed her identity as Jenna Caldwell, a 34-year-old who had gone missing 3 years earlier. At the time, she was last seen leaving her apartment after a breakup with her boyfriend, Ryan Coster. That case had gone cold after months of fruitless searching. No connection had ever been made between Jenna's disappearance and Emily Harrow's death until now. The similarities between the two cases were striking. Both women had died from asphyxiation. Both bodies were hidden inside containers, sealed and abandoned far from home. Both had been involved with Ryan shortly before their deaths. Investigators began to suspect that Emily's murder wasn't a single act of violence, but part of a disturbing pattern that had gone unnoticed for years. Detectives revisited old case files on Jenna. Witness statements painted a picture of a turbulent relationship. Jenna had confided in friends that Ryan had a temper and that he sometimes showed up unannounced at her workplace. She had talked about wanting to start over somewhere far away, but she vanished before she could follow through. At the time, police questioned Ryan but lacked the evidence to hold him. Without a body, the case had withered in the cold case archives. Now, with Jenna's remains recovered, the evidence was far more tangible. Duct tape identical to that found on Emily's tote had been used to wrap parts of the suitcase. The fishing line sealing it was traced to a specific brand sold in a handful of hardware stores, including one located less than a mile from Ryan's old apartment. The discovery shifted the investigation from a local manhunt to a multi-county search for a potential serial killer. News outlets seized on the story, broadcasting Ryan's photo across the state. Tips began to pour in, sightings of a man matching his description at bus stations, rest stops, and cheap motels. None of them led to an arrest. While the public focused on Ryan, investigators quietly explored another possibility. The precision of the disposal methods, the deliberate concealment, and the physical effort required suggested that Ryan may not have acted alone in either case. Forensic teams began combing through both crime scenes for trace DNA, looking for signs of a second person's involvement. The case, once centered on the search for a missing boyfriend, had transformed into something far more chilling: the hunt for a predator who had already killed at least twice and who might not have been working alone. It was a cold morning in late November when an anonymous tip led police to an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town. The property had been vacant for years, its roof sagging under the weight of neglect and its windows coated with grime. The front door hung crooked on rusted hinges, creaking open to reveal a stale, dusty air that clung to every surface. Officers moved carefully through the rooms, their flashlights cutting through the dim light, revealing peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, and the faint scurry of rodents retreating into the walls. The basement door was tucked behind the kitchen, secured with a padlock that looked newer than the rest of the house. A bolt cutter made quick work of it. The stairs groaned under the weight of each step as the team descended into the darkness. The beam of a flashlight swept across the concrete floor, landing on a disturbing sight, a neat stack of plastic storage totes identical to the one Emily had been found in. Next to them, rolls of heavy-duty duct tape sat in an open cardboard box, alongside industrial-strength zip ties and a coil of nylon rope. In the far corner of the basement, a mound of personal belongings lay in disarray. Women's handbags, shoes, and pieces of clothing were scattered among jewelry boxes and photo frames. None of it belonged to Emily or Jenna. The evidence hinted at other victims' names and faces not yet known to investigators. But the most chilling discovery was against the back wall, a large, locked chest freezer, its exterior frosted with ice despite the cool temperature of the room. When the lid was pried open, the officers froze. Inside lay the body of Ryan Coster, curled unnaturally, his skin pale and rigid from the cold. He had been dead for several days. A notebook was wedged against his chest, its pages filled with detailed accounts of Emily's and Jenna's murders. Dates, locations, and descriptions of the final moments were written in deliberate, steady handwriting. But handwriting analysis later revealed that none of it belonged to Ryan. The final page of the notebook contained only a short message she should have kept quiet. It was signed with a name unfamiliar to most, Victor Hanlon, a long-haul truck driver and, as detectives soon uncovered, Emily's estranged uncle. He had been largely absent from her life, but in recent months she had met with him several times in secret. Phone records confirmed their contact, and security footage from a rest stop showed Victor and Ryan together days before Emily's disappearance. The working theory shifted again. Investigators now believed Victor had orchestrated both murders, using Ryan as an accomplice in Jenna's death years earlier and later turning on him to silence him about Emily. The motive remained unclear. Family secrets, money, and control all floated as possibilities, but Victor himself had vanished. The farmhouse basement was sealed as a crime scene, but the unease it carried lingered. What began as a single tragic discovery in the woods had unraveled into a web of betrayal and calculated cruelty, leaving one final question unanswered. How many other names and faces lay hidden behind the silence of those plastic totes?